Hello and welcome to the Final Frontiersmen, a YouTube show about all things Trek. I'm your host today, Jeremy, and we're going to be doing some discussions and talks about cosplay with Star Trek. If you've been following our Star Trek Adventures games, you'll see that Bill, myself, and some of the others, we do it in costume, and it's a lot of fun. I've been doing the cosplay thing for about 10 years now, and anytime I do it, I have people run up to me and say, "Oh my goodness, you look so good. Where did you get that? Did you make that? How can I get involved with this?" And it's not as difficult or as expensive as you may think. So that's what I'm here to do today, is to talk about that and to give you guys some advice. I think that's really important to help the Star Trek community out. So this is going to be a two-part video. The first part is my tips, my advice, how to get started. And the second part is I want to talk to some other people in the community. I want to talk to a couple of people that you already know from the Star Trek Adventures group here at the Final Frontiersmen. And I'm going to talk to a couple of other people who actually have been going to conventions and getting involved with it. And that way you're hearing just an overall experience on how to get started yourself and ways to, I don't know, maybe break out of that shell. Because when I first started doing cosplay, I was very, very nervous. I was really, really afraid about how's this going to work? What's the reception going to be like? All right. So we're going to switch some things around so you can see some photos I'm going to show you. And let's go and get that switch done right now. All right. So in this video, you're going to hear me talk about Dragon Con. Dragon Con was the first time I actually did any serious cosplay. Dragon Con is a huge multimedia pop culture convention that's held in Atlanta, Georgia on Labor Day weekend. Dragon Con is very near and dear to my heart. If anybody from my Dragon Con family is watching, I love each and every one of you, and I can't wait to see you this year. You guys are so important to me. Anyway, we got started there at Dragon Con. It was mine and my wife's second year there at Dragon Con, and we had just saw George Takei, and the Star Trek feels were there, and people were in costume, and we just really wanted to get involved. And in the vendor area, there was a gentleman, and I really feel bad. I don't remember the name of the vendor that sold us our first costume. I feel bad about that, but we go there and he has Star Trek uniforms, and we're talking about, well, which one should we get? Well, we should get a matching one. All that. So we find the Kelvin uniforms. All right, and that was the one that had our size, that fit, and we decided to take those costumes. We had I got the blue shirt, my wife got the red shirt, and that's when I started learning about details in the costumes. And at that time, I was so new to Trek, and I knew the characters, I knew the shows, but when we start talking about details, like I first heard the spiral of engineering and the eye of science. I'm like, what is that? I thought you've got the badge, it's the Delta, and it's got the star in the middle. No. If you look closer, they have details in them. There's a science division. There's the eye, and the science, and the engineering has the spiral. So I learned about little details like that. The gentleman who sold us the uniforms sold us the badges that matched the costumes, right? And we went straight to Target to buy a pair of black pants. I didn't have any black shoes, so we were just going to wing it, right? We put those costumes on, and the next day we returned to Dragon Con, and the experience of going to conventions changed dramatically for us. We go from just people walking around and saying, "Hey, look, your costume looks good," to people running up and doing that to us. And that's something I want to point out. That's got to be something that you need to be comfortable with. And it's going to be one of my first pieces of advice. Make sure that you're going to be comfortable doing this, because you're going to get attention, and it's not always going to be You don't expect it to be negative. You expect it to be very positive, right? But just, it's okay because you're going to have people coming at you and say, oh my God, I love Star Trek. Oh my God, this is amazing. I was not getting this attention yesterday, right? So that's something, and then, then you have the experience, oh my God, can I take your photo? Yeah, sure. You got to straighten up, make sure your beard's straight and your hair's right. But my wife and I both actually started enjoying the attention very, very much, right? So let's just say that you go out and you buy your costume and you show up to this convention, but you're still nervous about it because Dragon Con, it's so huge. You just park in a parking deck there, and immediately you're in the middle of the crowd because it takes place over multiple city blocks. Well, let's just say you're at a small town convention and you got to walk through some areas where no one's really dressed up, and you like, oh, I don't know. I don't want people to think I'm weird, right? So here's my advice. Here's the second piece of advice. Be prepared, right? When I put together a Star Trek cosplay, it's usually a shirt. You have your uniform shirt and a pair of black pants. All right. So what my wife and I do, if we're ever going to go to a convention that we're not really sure how well the cosplay is going to be there, if it's going to be really huge or if it's going to be one or two people, we're not comfortable. Even after 10 years, admittedly, there's sometimes I'll go to a convention, I'm not super comfortable with it. So here's, again, second piece of advice, and it's going to be just go dress nice. If you can kind of see here in this photo here, I've got a dress shirt on. No, I did not take the time to iron it for that photo. I was being quick. Just wear a nice dress shirt. You got a, belt, pants. You'll be the nicest dressed person there, right? And then when you kind of get the feel for it, wow, there's a lot of people here that's dressed up. Go back to your car, grab your costume, sneak off to the bathroom, change your shirt, and now you're in costume, right? That's something that we do if we're not sure. And we've really, really appreciated that, right? So on to it. Again, that's a picture of me 10 years ago. That was before my hair started falling down and growing this way into this nice beard. And my very first cosplay. I was so proud of it, too. It felt good. And when I go back to what I was talking about before, about the attention I got, it was just like, wow. I started getting people like that I never knew was in Star Trek. These people walking by that were just in regular t-shirts coming up to me and now having conversations about Star Trek instead of me being that guy walking up to somebody in a uniform saying, oh my God, I love Star Trek, right? So that, again, there's my first uniform, and you'll see the little detail there with the signs. It's not the star, right? So the gold shirt in that situation would have the star that I thought about. That's where I'm going to start talking about the details. Details are very, very important and can take an okay cosplay and elevate it, right? Now, I am by far an expert on any of this stuff, okay? I do not have movie quality, screen accurate stuff. I try to get as close as I can, all right? Now, I try my best not to sound super gatekeepy, if that makes any sense, about how, wow, you're not wearing the correct badge. You can't play with me. Far, far from it. People can show up and just, if I look at you and say that's a Star Trek uniform, that's great. And you are just as much of a part of my family as anybody else who has spent upwards of hundreds of dollars. I love you, and we treat each other the same. But, again, just for some advice and some tips to make people say, wow, that's really good. Those details of having the correct badges, making sure your uniform and your badge, the era matches, the pips, make sure everything is what it needs to be. Does it have to be your first cosplay? Again, not at all. Because I'm going to start showing you now where I started making some mistakes, and I'm actually proud that I made them because it made me, I think, a better cosplayer. It made me start elevating things when I get into my next costume, which was this Nemesis Deep Space Nine outfit right here. Okay, now this was again my second cosplay, and I'm gonna zoom in a bit and talk about. Oh my God! See, my beard was starting to come in, right? If you'll notice right there, those pips were sewn on to the uniform, right? And they were just dangling there, right? And I looked at them and immediately thought, yeah, that ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work at all. So I started learning, right? And my journey through cosplay has taught me to don't be afraid to modify your costume if there's something that you just don't really like about it. Notice the badge there. The badge came already on the jacket there, and it was so far over, it bothered me. I'm like, this thing is almost under my arm. So I learned, I got a small razor, and there was a piece of Velcro under there that I shaved off. And, well, now I got to figure out how to reattach it. But I didn't even do that. I went out and bought metal pips to replace the ones that were on the neck, and I bought a metal badge, and it elevated that costume so much. And I remember looking at it in the mirror and thinking, wow, this is fantastic. It just looks so much better. So don't be afraid to modify these costumes whatsoever. So that's going to lead me into another thing is, where do I get these things? I don't have a custom tailor. I don't know how to sew yet. So I just go to places like Etsy or eBay. I always try to encourage that you maybe reach out to some local places if you have around, if you have anybody who makes like clothes or costumes near you. Always support those people. They are some fantastic people, and I'm trying to work with one right now to have a custom job made right now. Always support your local people, but sometimes that just, if you just don't have that option, going to eBay, typing in a search, I want this Star Trek costume. Etsy, again, you can have custom work done. You'll send in your measurements, and they can come up with some really, really great looking costumes for you that, in my opinion, they look fine. Now, I've seen people make their own stuff, and it looks fantastic. Absolutely just phenomenal stuff, right? So you're gonna spend the eBay Etsy route. Expect about $50, maybe sometimes upwards to 70, depending on what you're getting. And it can creep up, just depending. All right. So anyway, we're gonna move on to my next one. If I can get myself to agree with me, this is when I started doing some custom stuff, right? So I moved in, and this is about the time I was watching Star Trek Enterprise. You can see that I went out and I bought the jumpsuit, and it was not the highest quality jumpsuit ever. But the hat is something my wife made. We bought just a black hat, and we bought a little patch. A little patch that she just sews right onto the hat, and it looks fine, right? That's by far my favorite uniform, but we were watching Enterprise and loving it at that time, so we had to get the Star Trek Enterprise uniforms. Now we're going to get into more territory where I made a mistake, right? And this is, again, where I try my best not to sound like a gatekeeping jerk, right? But I wanted, like, Picard had just came out, and we found these uniforms on I want to say it was eBay. We found these uniforms here, and we were like, oh God, the show's not even out yet, but the uniforms are here, right? So we found these, and we wanted to be like the first to wear them, right? And I was looking at very low resolution screenshots of this being used on screen and in background photos before the show even comes out. The pip colors are wrong, and the badge is wrong. It was close, but the pips are wrong, and I got called out for it too. Now that's going to be something that you got to be prepared for is occasionally you do run into that guy who he comes up and he's got this movie accurate Wrath of Khan Monster Maroon uniform on. Looks fantastic. And he's like, oh, those are from the new Picard. But the badge is wrong. Don't be that jerk. Don't be that jerk. That like, because I was ready to argue with the guy. I was like, no, this is it. This is the one I saw in a very low resolution photo. This is it. Don't be that jerk, right? So anyway, moving on. I corrected it later. Oh, and the chevron that was on the shoulders is not present in that uniform. So it's not accurate. I love accuracy. People still enjoyed it, and they wanted to talk to me, and I still had this family come up to me and say, oh my God, I love Star Trek so much, which means a lot, right? But I've since retired that uniform. Then we moved into this guy right here. I started getting a little more, the details were there. There's my metal badge right there. I've got my pips right there now. I'm going to get into a little bit about these pips that was on my neck right here. Those were before I bought a 3D printer. And I went out and I done some research and I found out that you could buy magnetic pips that were 3D printed, and when I got them in, they look fantastic. They really, really look good. Whoever did those, really good work. And the pins didn't harm the fabric that on the neck piece there, right? So that's something to think about. If you can find magnetic stuff, it's going to preserve your uniform a little bit longer. So that's going to be another tip that I throw out there, okay? I'm going to throw a couple of links down there in the bottom that's going to point you in the right direction of where I'm getting some of this stuff. For example, the badges that I get are from a company called Fansets. They do really, really, really good stuff. This badge here is from Fansets. The badge in the corner there is from Fansets as well. I don't know why, but they list in the descriptions of some of their badges like this is not intended for cosplay use. And I don't know why. Who's going to stop me? Feel free to report me. Anyway, but they do good work, and their badges always, they pop out. Now, another detail that I found is like the badges on the show don't exactly shine, but for some reason that's something that I do, right? That's an inaccuracy that I do that I'm okay with. They're not metal on the show. They don't appear to be anyway. They seem to be like a matte. I don't know what they're made out of. Please correct me. They look plastic to me. But the shiny stuff just does look really, really good, right? So moving on, we get into, there's where I corrected my uniform before. It's like, all right, now the pips are now silver is something that I didn't notice before. And I had a 3D printed badge. I was just discovering that this 3D printing stuff, this is really cool, right? I've got to get into that. That's really neat. Which takes me into, I just went crazy with it, right? This is where props start to come in, right? And there's me as a security officer. At this time, I had purchased a 3D printer. Do you need a 3D printer? No, not at all. That shirt that you can buy off Etsy or eBay, or please support someone local, work with them to make something custom for you. That shirt and a badge and some pips, that badge is going to cost you about $30. Those pips are going to cost you about $30, depending on where you go. What like a pair of black pants that you got in your closet? You probably already got. What are we looking at? It's probably $110, $120. There's your costume, right? But props can elevate your cosplay, right? So tribbles, you can get online and buy tribbles. I used to, in my Kelvin uniform, I used to have a little tribble that I would carry around, and people loved it. They wanted to pet the tribble and all that fun stuff. It was great. But I really wanted to elevate things as much as I could, and I had a path in front of me. I could either try to learn sewing, or I could go into 3D printing. And I felt like, 3D printing, I just really feel like has a lot more than what I'm interested in. So I did. I bought a 3D printer, and one of the first things that I 3D printed was this phaser. If I can get it to actually show, I printed a TNG era phaser. This was my own personal work, and I painted it myself, which is another thing that I've picked up from cosplay, is learning how to paint and airbrush. I'm not the best, but I'm getting better, right? So, and it leads into other props. I have made if I can get this to show, a tricorder. This was 3D printed and it broke. So be prepared for things like that to happen, but it's something that I can easily fix. But I did make a tricorder, the medical variant that has the little thing on top, the scanner on top. I'm going to throw it around. Anyway, it's all kinds of fun stuff. My wife does a Dr. Ta'ana cosplay, so she wants the medical things like the hypo sprays. This is a lot of fun to get into, but you can also buy these props already made from people who make this stuff. It's always support fun artists and that sort of thing. But if you want to do it yourself, I'll leave a link in the description down below for the 3D printer that I use. It's an Ender 3 V2. Depending on when you pick it up, it's about $270, $275. So there you go. But you can make some really fun stuff, like this Strange New Worlds era phaser that I made that is, again, broken because, well, accidents happen. You drop props. We're going to be more careful with it. A little fun story about this particular phaser. Ethan Peck, Mr. Spock himself, has held this very phaser. We had a photo op with him. My wife runs up to him, hands him this phaser and said, "Would you please shoot me with this phaser?" He laughed and says, "Absolutely, I will shoot you with a phaser." So, lots of fun stories and such out of that. Now I'm going to get into character cosplay. Okay. One of the reasons why I wanted to do Star Trek cosplay is because I don't feel like I look like anybody in particular in Star Trek. All right. So I can just put on a uniform and 4 pips, put on my red uniform, the 4 pips, I'm Captain Nobody. And I was always super intimidated to do a character cosplay because intimidation, right? So my wife saw Lower Decks, love Lower Decks, and she loves Dr. Ta'ana, and she's like, "We should be Shax and Ta'ana." I'm not shaving my beard. She said you had to. You're right. I don't have to. So, there it is. Did the Bajoran earring, which I 3D modeled and printed myself. My wife did help me with the jewelry and putting the chain on there. That is the phaser rifle that I printed that took me 3 months to do. So, I want to tell you a little bit about my experience with character cosplay. When I'm just in a standard uniform and I am captain, lieutenant, whatever, nobody, right? That is, you get a lot of people who come up to you and say, "Oh my God, Star Trek's amazing. I love what you do. Your costume's great." That's fun. But when you're a character, now people start shouting lines at you and that sort of thing. And people accepted and loved so much our Shax and Ta'ana that we did. It was so much fun to do things like that. So I can't encourage it enough to just be yourself, but also be creative. Don't be afraid to do anything. Take some liberties with things, because there I had a beard, and people still knew immediately that I was Shax. I wear glasses too. I had glasses on and people didn't care, right? Don't let things bother you, okay? So again, it's really inexpensive to do, and I just really wanted to make a video here to talk about just how to go about doing it. Maybe just some ideas to get started. And hey, if any of you guys out there have a few tips that you want to throw down in the comments, please let us know. I would love to hear some more ideas from you. If you have any questions or if you're feeling a little concerned about getting started, please reach out to me. I'd love to help you join this amazing community and just get out there and don't be afraid to do it, right? All right, guys, that's going to end it for this particular video. Again, please like, comment, all that fun stuff. Let us know. And be on the lookout for part 2, where I interview some more people. And maybe they won't be as nervous as I am. And maybe they can give you a few tips that I didn't give. All right, guys, thank you for watching. You guys are always amazing. Thank you so much. And live on the process.